Major parts of the government shut down because the Democrats and Republicans didn't have a full agreement on immigration, in particular the fate of 800,000 Dreamers, so they couldn't pass a bill funding the government. Does this prove the Democrats are finally standing up to Trump and carrying through on their promises to defend the Dreamers, immigrants, and other oppressed peoples? No. It proves that the Democrats are willing to stab millions of immigrants in the back to cut deals with Trump. And it proves even this effort at collaboration wasn't enough for this bloodthirsty, white supremacist fascist regime, which is hell-bent on making America white again and persecuting tens of millions of immigrants. Last Friday, Senator Schmuck Fumer sat down for cheeseburgers with Trump to try to cut a deal which the Democrats were bending over backwards to do. Later, he complained that negotiating with President Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O. Schumer and the Democrats shamefully and criminally did not make clear that they considered immigrants, all immigrants, to be full human beings. They did not insist immigrants should not be insulted, demonized, spied on, lied about, hounded, harassed, arrested, abused, and have their families split up, simply because they were not born in the U.S. They did not speak the truth, that many, if not most, immigrants have come here because this country's imperialist system has turned their home countries into living hells that are impossible for many to live in. Instead, Schumer offered to fully fund Trump's border wall and increase funding for the U.S. military to rain death and destruction across the planet, including on the very countries many immigrants are fleeing from. In return, Schumer hoped to get some kind of deal granting legal status for 800,000 Dreamers, while basically throwing 11 million undocumented immigrants and millions more legal immigrants under the bus, plus a few concessions on aid for Puerto Rico and on healthcare. As Revcom analyzed earlier this week, the Democrats claim to be the champions of the immigrants, while they hinge everything on how much they will concede to Trump. While the persecution of immigrants and their leaders becomes more blatant, intimidating, and unapologetic every day, they are more concerned with working out a deal with fascists who are more aggressive and open about it every day than they are about actually defending in the concrete the masses of people suffering this. The Democrats differ with the fascists over how best to exploit, control, and when they deem it necessary, drive out the immigrants, and not whether to exploit or control them. They will make whatever compromises they think will serve their larger interests, which at the end of the day is the preservation of the capitalist imperialist system, which they share with the fascists, even as they differ sometimes sharply over how. They pose as friends and call for some reforms in the larger part to try to control and derail battles waged by immigrants and other groups fighting oppression. They will not hesitate to sacrifice those fights when they see it is in conflict with what they deem to be the larger interests. Even now, we hear talk of going along with Trump's demands for the sake of the elections for the Senate and for the House of Representatives in the Republican states. Democrats' collaboration doesn't bring back politics as usual. Fascists barrel ahead. The Democrats had reportedly banked on Trump being chastened by the public shitstorm over him calling Haiti and Africa, and by implication all non-white peoples, shithole countries, and calling for more immigrants from nearly all white Norway. Surely they thought this open Nazi rhetoric would put these fascists on the defensive. But this was not to be, just the opposite. Schumer's concessions on the wall weren't enough for the Trump-Pence regime and the Republic-fascist Congress. Within hours of the meeting, the Trump-Pence regime demanded harsher treatment of immigrants across the country, stepped up ICE raids and deportations, and much, much more. Then the fascists started drawing even more public lines in the sand, trying to pound into place new fascist America First terms around immigration, saying the Democrats were putting a few illegal immigrants, which in the fascist view includes DACA recipients, ahead of the needs of real, i.e. white, Americans and their safety. This is a blatant appeal to the racism and chauvinism of American-born people, especially white people, whipping up supposed threats from those who had been kept at the very bottom of society, super exploited and persecuted. Trump's campaign released an ad on Saturday declaring that the Democrats will be complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants because they're refusing to crack down on immigration. And the White House is refusing any negotiations on immigrants, including DACA, despite Trump's lie that he cared about them. While the government is closed, i.e., the fascists were going to set the terms and only their terms. This makes clear that criminalizing immigrants and immigration, putting the lives of millions and millions in peril, is the core part of the Trump-Pence fascist agenda. And drawing a line in the sand around it has everything to do with consolidating the fascist regime, while consolidating and unleashing its core fascist, white supremacist supporters, and trying to get broader sections of society to go along on the basis of American chauvinism and American lives come first. The Republicans are using the shutdown crisis to advance their agenda, consolidate their power, and enforce terms in which they can rule without even bothering with the Democrats. Now the Trump-Pence regime is hammering the Democrats for hurting the military and the troops. Trump tweeted, "Democrats are far more concerned with illegal immigrants than they are with making our great military or safety at our dangerous southern borders." This, too, is part of the regime's campaign to crush their ruling class opponents and enforce blind, unquestioning support for America's killing machine. And how have the Democrats responded? Not with unequivocally condemning Trump's rancid anti-immigrant America First militarism and xenophobia, but by agreeing to Trump's demands for a massive increase in military spending, and now by claiming that they're the ones who really support the military and the troops. In the fight against Trump, the Democrats are part of the problem and not part of the solution. This episode shows that the Democrats' effort at compromise and reaching across the aisle are not only ineffectual, they're criminal and extremely harmful. While they're busy kissing Trump's ass and normalizing his fascism, they're setting terms that it's okay and realistic in the politics of the possible to throw millions of immigrants into the maw of this fascist regime. Meanwhile, these Democratic leaders are working overtime to keep the millions and millions of people who hate Trump loyal to them and trapped in the killing confines of electoral politics as usual in the current political terms, fighting to prevent them from taking the kind of independent action that could change the whole terrain, as the Trump fascists viciously target immigrants as they threaten the whole planet and the future of humanity.